Okay, in this video we're looking at section 9.3, solving quadratic equations using square roots. So our learning target for today, by the end of this video, you will be able to solve a quadratic equation using square roots. So let's look at this quadratic equation. X squared is equal to d. If d is a positive number, then if we have the equation x squared equals d, to solve this for x, we're going to take the square root of both sides. And so when we take the square root of a positive number, we're going to have two real solutions. X is going to be equal to plus or minus the square root of d. If d is equal to 0, then the x squared is equal to 0. So when we take the square root of both sides, well, the square root of 0 is just 0. So there's one real solution. And then lastly, if d is a negative number, then x squared equals d has no real solution. There's not a real number that will be the solution to x equals the square root of negative d. This is not going to be a real number. Alrighty, let's take a look at our first example here. We have 2x squared minus 32 equals 0. So remember, we're solving this quadratic to get x by itself. So to do that, our first step is to add 32 on both sides. So when we do that, and remember you're going to show all your work on your homework, it's 2x squared is equal to 32. And then we're solving for x, so we're going to divide both sides by 2. So we get x squared is equal to 16. Alright, so we have x squared, but we want x. So to get rid of the squaring, we're going to take the square root on both sides. And when we take the square root of 16, 16 is a perfect square, it's 4 squared. Since the radicand is a positive number, we're going to end up with a plus or minus 4 as our solution. So there are two real solutions to this problem. Make sure you have the plus or minus in your answer. Okay, the next quadratic we have is x squared minus 8 is equal to negative 8. So let's solve this for x, and to do that we're going to add 8 on both sides of the equation. The 8's are going to cancel there. We get x squared is equal to 0. Solving this for x, we're going to take the square root of both sides, and we end up with x is equal to, well, the square root of 0 is just 0. So this one has one real solution here. Okay, and our last quadratic that we're going to solve right now is negative 2x squared plus 3 equals 27. So again, using our equation solving skills, we're going to subtract 3 on both sides of the equation first. Remember on your homework, you have to show every step. So I know some of these are pretty straightforward, the algebra on here, but this is algebra, so we're going to show every step in algebra here. So then we're dividing both sides by negative 2, then negative 2 over negative 2 gives us a 1. So x squared is equal to a negative 12. Well, let's think about this. Is there a number you can multiply by itself and still end up getting a negative? And the answer is no. There's no real number that you can multiply to itself and end up with a negative number. So there is no real solution on this one. So make sure you write that on your paper. No real solution. Okay, next we're going to look at example 2. So this one is similar to example 2 in your textbook. So if you need to look at another example like this one, check out your textbook. We're going to solve the quantity. So it's in parentheses. This quantity x minus 3 is squared and it's equal to 16. So since this whole thing is squared, in order to get rid of the squared term here, we're going to take the square root of both sides. And so when we do that, the square root and the square cancel, and we're left with the quantity of x minus 3 is equal to the square root of 16. Since the radicand is positive, we know we have two solutions here. It's going to be plus or minus 4. Okay? So the next step then, we've got to get the x by itself. So we're going to add 3 to both sides. So when we add 3 to both sides, we see that it cancels off here. We end up with x is by itself, so x plus 0. And then we have positive 4 and a negative 4 plus 3. So we have to break this up into two pieces because this could either take on positive 4 or it could take on a negative 4 value. So let's start with plus 4 and let's add 3 to it. And then over here, let's look at it when this evaluates to a negative 4 plus 3. And when we do that, we get x equals 4 plus 3 is 7. And over here, negative 4 plus 3 gives us a negative 1. So notice we have two solutions here. All right, looking at example 3, which is similar to example 3 in your textbook. We're solving a quadratic here, but in this case, we're going to look at this quadratic, solve it, and when we get our solution, we're going to round the solution to the nearest hundredth place. So remember, that's 2 decimal places, the hundredths place. Okay, so let's rewrite this quadratic. So it's 2x squared plus 10 equals 32. Okay, so what's the first step? Hopefully you said we're subtracting 10 on both sides, and we're going to be left with 2x squared is equal to 22. We're going to divide both sides by 2, again showing all of our work, and we get x squared is equal to 11. To solve this, we're taking the square root on both sides. Remember, the radicand is positive here, so we're going to end up with a plus or minus solution. So 11 is not a perfect square, so you're going to need to go to your calculator for this one. Okay, so we need to go to a calculator, or you could use your online calculator, and we're approximating the solution. This is not an exact answer, so we're going to approximate it, and we're going to have plus or minus because this is a positive value. And when you put the square root of 11 into your calculator, you're going to get 3.31662, etc., right? We said we're rounding it to the hundredths place, so we're going to say x is approximately equal to plus or minus 3.32, and there's our solution.